Sex trafficking is a violation of human rights because people are being taken against their will and forced to have commercial sex. To solve this problem in Portugal, we should enforce stricter punishments for traffickers and men who use their services. Sex trafficking is a crime where women, children, and men are being coerced into committing commercial sex acts. Men, women, and children are stolen and forced into rings where they are trafficked. Trafficking has been a problem in Portugal since 2008, but from 2015 to 2017, the number of trafficking victims has increased. Crime groups have been getting involved in trafficking so they can sell drugs throughout the rings. Portugal is a hotspot for sex trafficking because it is an easy way to take the tourists who don't know the area that come to visit the country. Trafficking rings are where the victims are taken and held until the traffickers decide to move to a different area, and they are usually on farms or in shops. The victims are hired for seasonal jobs like olive and strawberry picking. Fields and agricultural areas are also popular spots where victims are being held. Trafficking has doubled in less than a decade, and the number of victims has risen from 86 in 2015 to 175 in 2017. There is a need for sex in exchange for money, but there is also a high demand for porn. Sex traffickers profit from lucrative porn demand because it is an easy way to sell victims rather than doing it in person and risking the chance of victims escaping. Technology has changed the trafficking game by allowing people to be sold and tricked into becoming trafficked online. Because there is little to no conflict to purchasing women and girls, there is a higher chance that the perpetrator will not be noticed. Therefore, they will have the power to have sex without being caught. Money is one of the main reasons why people are trafficked. When traffickers are selling victims, their annual income is around $152 billion a year. And the more people they traffic, the more money they make. Men are having sex with the victims in lieu of abusing their own kids. The clients usually have no common profile, but sometimes they are pedophiles and tourists. Men and women who grew up in poverty and not finish school are more likely to be subjected to trafficking. People in poverty are typically victims of trafficking because they don't have access to basic services such as school, which would allow them the knowledge they need to have a career. Most victims are adults, and 65% of victims of labor exploitation, which means they are not getting paid or treated fairly. Only 14% of victims are children because there is a higher demand for young adult women. Traffickers lure victims in by using false promises to provide them with better jobs. Traffickers control their victims by promising to pay off their debt. The people who are trafficked come to Portugal from all over the world, places like Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, India, Eastern Europe, and West Africa. Women are often persuaded to join because they are offered jobs as nannies, models, waitresses, or dancers. But not all women are lured in by those jobs. Most victims are just taken. Men are sent overseas to be construction workers, but are forced to perform commercial sex acts. Traffickers in Portugal are Thais, Bulgarians, and Romanians. Most traffickers are men, but some are women. Some traffickers even use victims to recruit new people to be trafficked. Victims of trafficking suffer from unhealthy living conditions such as abuse and PTSD. Upon arrival, victims are stripped of their documents, including passports, IDs, and social security cards. Then they are abused and sold. They are shot up with drugs so that they get addicted and depend on traffickers to provide for them. The living conditions are very unhealthy, and most places where the victims of traffickers stay are not sanitary, no AC or heating, and they are not provided with the proper clothing. If the victims are caught trying to escape by the traffickers, they are usually beaten brutally, but if they are found by the police, they are detained and prosecuted for criminal activity. If the victims are able to escape, they still live with the long-term turmoil such as HIV, AIDS, drug addiction, and most of them experience PTSD. There are 21 million victims worldwide, and because there is such a high number of people being trafficked, low birth rates have started to appear. Between 2008 and 2016, there were 569 confirmed victims, and life after being trafficked is not easy. 38 required a reflection period, and 79 received psychological or medical assistance. One of the things that Portugal government is doing to prevent sex trafficking is trying to make people more cautious about it. The government has tried to raise awareness for trafficking by getting social media involved. And there are even hashtags like to raise awareness for trafficking. There are even hashtags human trafficking awareness, hashtag end it, hashtag human rights, hashtag end it movement, and hashtag modern slavery. They are also trying to raid places where trafficking is suspected. The Portuguese government has conducted 4,539 incursions and inspections. Portugal has prohibited all forms of sex and labor trafficking, and the punishment for these crimes are 3 to 10 years in prison. In 2014, the government provided 2,400 euros for awareness training activities and made sure the victims had the right shelter, health, and other services. There are 4 organization centers where victims can go for legal assistance, educational assistance, and temporary residence. However, the government only gives the victims a 60-day reflection period, which during this time they can get assistance they need, but after the period is over, they are forced to move on and no longer receive government support. In addition to what they have already done, in my opinion, the Portuguese government needs to form more groups and search teams to look for traffickers and trafficking rings. They should also be providing lifetime services to the victims and give victims a longer reflection period. Plus, take faster steps as soon as they are notified someone is missing and that it could be relating to trafficking. Sex trafficking is a violation of human rights because people are being taken against their will and forced to have commercial sex. Victims are being trafficked, and for the most part, the police and government in Portugal are not taking the proper steps to help find them. To solve this problem in Portugal, we should enforce stricter punishments for traffickers and the men who use their services.